LG has quietly launched the budget Optimus 2 with a modest 3.2-inch screen, Android 2.3 and a 3-megapixel camera, and a relatively powerful 1500 mAh battery, the perfect low-end Android handset. I expect this to come in on very low monthly tariffs and on pay-as-you-go. Looks good though, doesn't it? One for your partner or mum or kid. Although Nokia hasn't officially ever claimed a specific date for updates to Bell for existing Symbian smartphones, many people, including me, had been hoping for the update to start appearing before Christmas. However, we've now had official word that a little more patience is required. Nokia says it will, quote, make Nokia Bell available to consumers globally by rolling it out in early 2012. Although it's tempting to use the word delay, I can't find an official statement promising a date in 2011, so there we go. It'll be ready when it's ready. Momentum behind the Windows Phone platform seems to be growing. The Windows Phone marketplace has now passed the 50,000 apps mark. Content is being added at the rate of 300 items a day. Many of you know how sniffy I am about App Store numbers. After all, most of us only use a few dozen at most. But 50,000 isn't to be sneezed at for a competitor to the mammoth iOS and Android ecosystems. What we have here is the all-new and yes, white Sony Ericsson Xperia Arc S. You will remember that I reviewed its predecessor, the plain Arc in black, in Phone Show 139 at the start of the year. I gave it a qualified thumbs up, but I felt there were lots of things that could have been better. On the one hand, the Arc S does address a number of the deficiencies. On the other, it's only a minor improvement in terms of hardware. Most of the software improvements are rolling out to the older Arc in updates. So if you've got the original, just hang on to it. But viewed standalone, the Arc S is pretty impressive, especially in this enamel plastic finish, which doesn't show fingerprints. And well, it looks a bit different in a sea of black touchscreen slabs. Think the white iPhone 4 look, but with a far larger screen. In fact, the 4.2-inch screen is hands down the most impressive thing about the Arc S. Yes, it's LCD rather than OLED, but there's zero air gap. I don't know if you can see there. The display seems utterly flush with the top surface. There's minimal reflection from your surroundings and a transflective layer beneath, which means that it's also decent outside. There's also the Bravia software algorithms, which boost colours and contrast. In summary, it's the most vibrant LCD screen I've ever seen, rivaling AMOLED displays with less power drain here when showing a white background. Having said that, this is all with the backlight brightness turned up to maximum, at which setting you will struggle to make it through a day if you use the Arc S a lot. Real-world Arc S users will probably work at half brightness. There's no auto setting here, strangely. What we have here is an Android 2.3.4 smartphone with a single-core 1.4 gig processor. It's just about fast enough, but never really blew me away in the same way that the dual-core Galaxy S2 did. Apparently, Android 4 is to be made available as an update in March. The 3 control buttons here for Android, back, home and menu, are all physical, which I approve of, and pressing the home button brings up the unlock swipe, so there's no fumbling needed at the top of the device every time. The buttons are fairly stiff though and rather thin, but they're still a whole lot better than capacitive touch spots. The Arc's distinctive, arc shape here on the back is still evident, with the bulky shutter button and loudspeaker pushed at the very bottom few millimetres, and with the micro USB port and 3.5mm audio jack and 8-megapixel camera all pushed to the very top of the phone. The audio jack positioning in particular will annoy some, but it didn't really bother me. I'm flexible. There's also a mini HDMI port here on the top for screen mirroring and video playback, but I've never actually used this on any of my Nokias. Do you find HDMI useful? Comments welcome. The speaker down here is adequate, but a bit tinny. Here's a demo at max volume, also showing off the rather excellent Bravia display. Just a bit of distortion there at the top end. Although the camera is the same unit as on the original Arc, the LED light now acts as a flash in the expected way. I guess enough people must have complained about the original always-on behaviour, and no, it's still not a patch on the Xenon Flash on my N8, but I digress. In most daylight conditions, the Arc S's camera is good enough for most smartphone aficionados, being up with the iPhone 4S and Galaxy S2's units, albeit with more aggressive noise reduction, meaning that grass and textures appear rather smeared. Software additions include a sweep panorama mode in both traditional 2D and rather gimmicky 3D modes. The latter only apparently outputs properly to an HDMI connected 3D TV, which I don't have. Still, one for the future. Video captures a decent 720p as shown here. And because it's cold and windy outside, doing this next bit indoors. This is test video footage on the Xperia Arc S with continuous autofocus and surprisingly good stereo sound, as you heard in the last clip. Our Christmas tree is still up, so let's have a look at the macro video. Continuous autofocus is here. It takes around 3 or so seconds to lock on, which is okay, but it does lead to a bit of a hunting effect when you suddenly switch subject like this. But after a few seconds it comes good. On the whole, the Arc S, as the original Arc, makes for a really rather good video capture device. One thing that's missing on the Arc S is a front-facing camera, so no Google Hangouts or freeing video calls for you. It's an odd omission, to be honest, given how long this hardware has been in development. As with previous Xperia devices, there's Sony Ericsson's Timescape layer on top of Android and a multitude of customizations throughout the OS. The home screen's fairly traditional, but the app grid is side-swipeable, like iOS, and there's this iOS-like app jiggle mode for deleting apps. Lawyers? What lawyers? The notifications pane is plain, and I missed connectivity shortcuts and all music player controls. Sony Ericsson's main involvement in Android has been in its Timescape widgets, shown here, which are great for beginners, to be fair, but immediately disposable for Android old hands, and in the more detailed customizations in its applications. One such is this very Windows Phone-like side-swiping set of views for each contact, integrating Facebook fairly deeply into your PIM mix. Even more evidence that mobile OS interfaces are converging? I think so. There's this optional gesture input layer on top of the built-in virtual keyboard. In essence, a swipe clone. I still can't get on with this means of inputting text myself. And Sony Ericsson's camera interface is still second to none, with swipe on gallery and settings panes. Very, very swish. Let's Golf is the bundle game here. Great for me, as I love a good golf game, and it looks superb on the 854 by 480 high-resolution screen. Track ID is a music recognition service, while Wise Pilot is a navigation system that you have to pay for, but which no one will because they already have the free Google Maps with its own navigation functions. Plus the Office Suite viewers, the rather primitive web-based Neo Reader barcode and QR code scanner, and a bunch of other Sony Ericsson odds and ends that few will want. For example, there's the purely commercial Video Unlimited store, if you like paying over the odds for device-locked movies, and the similar but sim-locked Music Unlimited system, which just gave an error in my case. No matter, I wouldn't have bought music that way anyway. Plus the Play Now store offering vastly overpriced low-resolution apps and games. Just say no and stick to the Android market. Add it all up though and you get a very competent and desirable Android smartphone. Everything you'd expect from the OS is here, plus quite a bit extra, all in a super stylish, if 100% plastic package, with a lovely screen and a decent camera. And here's the kicker, all available for under £300, SIM-free, brand new already. Yes, in the overall Android pecking order, the Arc S sits slightly under the current cutting-edge dual-core smartphones, but then it's also cheaper, lighter, and thinner, and still has much to recommend it. On the other hand, if you're a patient person, grab the original Arc at around £200 or less, and wait for a range of updates throughout the first half of 2012 that will give you much of the same interface and functionality tweaks. The white Arc S isn't a top 5 candidate for me, but it's also not far outside, and I wouldn't have minded at all if I'd had this in my Christmas stocking.